And we will try to screw it up less next time, although we can't possibly screw it up as badly as the city is screwing this up. And welcome to the This Week in Worcester podcast. I am Tom Marino. I'm the editor of This Week in Worcester. I'm here with Mr. John Edward Keogh. He is a contributor to This Week in Worcester. He is executive producer of Managing Media. He is president of Hollywood Film Group. He is a guy.
I'm a dude.
How are you, sir? And how was your week?
It was pretty good. It was busy. A lot of stuff. A lot of still catching up from the post festival stuff, but it's going pretty good. It's doing good and it's getting better. How about that?
Fair enough. Interesting story from Brad Petroshan at the TNG today or yesterday. I heard about this before I saw this story, at least, about, there was an arrest in Northboro at a youth sports game. And Brad has that individual happens to be a Worcester police officer and has been placed on leave pending investigation. Apparently, we will find out the name of that individual once they are arraigned. Apparently, it's something to do with Northboro policy. So we will not know until they face arraignment, but apparently have been summoned to face charges for assault at a youth sports game.
Yeah, I watched. Did you watch the video?
I didn't.
So long story short, dad. It looks like he's the dad of a player. He's on one side of a giant soccer field. Walks over, says something, to the coach, and the coach says something back, and then he grabs him and he, starts to kind of shake him. It looks like the coach pushes back. Then several other people get involved, and it looks like he kind of takes him down to the ground. From what you can see in the video, but clearly was the aggressor. There's really no evidence other than that, and so this is one of those things where, like, to me, we need to hold our officers, our elected officials, our appointed officials to a higher standard, right? And so right now, this officer is being paid to be at home. I don't know, that a paid vacation for all intents and purposes, right? And paid administrative leave, as they call it. But according to the union contract, that leave is not less than. They're just not eligible for overtime or additional assignments. That's the current bargaining agreement with the city of Worcester. So this officer is being paid to have however long off, a week off or 2 weeks off. And I just don't believe that is the case. We have clear and distinct evidence. I believe in due process, but we have clear and distinct evidence that this officer engaged in an aggressive action, that they engaged another person, that they caused an incident to happen where the person ended up on the ground and they were involved in it. Our officers should not be engaging in that kind of behavior. Just is what it is. Now, I'm sure that there was something that I'm not going to put this coach into some kind of saint status, because these sports games, with kids often involve, adults acting stupid, and saying things or doing things. And so it's very possible. And apparently there's a lot of rumors coming out that this coach has been known to shout things from the sideline about other players and other players' families. So maybe this coach did say something that got this father upset. Or maybe the coach coached the other team in a way that got the father upset. Whatever it was that caused this person to get upset, even when you're off duty, you should be held to the standard of being an officer. And of course, I guarantee they know you're an officer, so they know that they probably can't fight back, and so it just carries with it extra weight.
Mhm.
This kind of behavior is not becoming of an officer. It just is what it is.
Yep. And I think it's probably still the same way. I don't think it's been changed, that if he is not charged and convicted of a crime, he will have the right to his job back.
Right. He has to be charged with and convicted. He cannot be charged with and acquitted. He cannot be charged with and dismissed. Cannot be charged with and put into pre-trial probation, which is almost certainly the thing that's going to happen, because he's an officer and there was no like egregious like battering assault, because multiple people intervened before it turned into anything bad. He'll
Mhm.
likely be given some kind of warning and probationary times, public service or something, and then he'll be back on the job. And we've gotten a lot of criticism, both online and in person, that by saying that this is the kind of standard that I want officers to be held to, that somehow we're anti-cop. But I'm not. I want to be. I want them to be held to a higher standard. That's it. I want them to be held at least to the same standard that they hold young black boys who happen to drive through the West Side, which is, to yank them out of cars and and have them arrested at the drop of the hat because they're driving in the wrong neighborhood. I just want them to be held to the standard that they say that they are held to. They're the first responders and all this other stuff, and they're heroes by wearing the badge. Okay, fine, be that. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But then when you do this, you lose your job. No questions asked. You just lose your job. You shouldn't have a job. You shouldn't be allowed to be a police officer. If you can't handle your emotions like this in a girls' soccer game,
Exactly.
how can you handle your emotions when you're faced with an actual situation where we need you to be calm, cool, and collected? And maybe there's a gun involved. Maybe there's a crisis where someone needs to be. And I get it. I understand the response to that is going to be, well, everybody gets upset with their kids. Sure. But this indicates a behavior pattern. And so you can't have this. You can't have the ability. Not everybody flips out. That's a dad that has a kid in a game. Not everybody does that. Some people get upset, and some people handle it in a better way. How about this? The reasoning behind this is even suspect, because if you truly wanted to beat up the coach, you could have done it outside of the camera-laden, sports complex, right? So you really, like, if you look at it, he didn't even have the wherewithal to think, hey, I need to go like somewhere else and maybe confront this guy, at the bar or whatever. But no, instead he decided to do it there in front of witnesses upon witnesses. And of course, it's 2025, so there's always a camera. And by the way, this is the only camera we have so far from Channel 5 who got the scoop there on our local legacy media, is that they got the camera from the facility. I guarantee there's a bunch of cell phone videos we just haven't seen yet. I guarantee it.
Mhm.
Probably with audio, and because that's just the nature of these kind of sports things, and also the nature of our reality. When he was clearly yelling. You could see him yell, like speaking from across the field. So I guarantee someone popped out a phone and started recording it, which is, we're going to see that video at some point soon. So,
Yep. Almost certain to be back on the job. Almost certain.
and that's what, and this is what, I know not this Tuesday, but the following Tuesday is the special meeting related to the Department of Justice report and Chief Saucier's response to it. And this is the kind of thing that we have to address. This is what we're saying, is that a regular person who did this would go to jail or would be, potentially lose their job or whatever. There is a 0.0% chance that this guy loses his job. 0.0, unless there's a radical shift in politics in Worcester in the next 10 days. But there is no, and I know this, even Chief Saucier, who I think is probably going to do at least the best job of all the chiefs in the last 20 years. I think that he would make the argument, well, he's been on the job for how long, and he's got a family and he's got kids, and I know the arguments in advance. And
so does just about every. So what about? Do they ever use that explanation, if you will, when they're arresting somebody. Oh, well.
No, they don't. No,
and we still live. I mean, I know it's teetering, but we do live in the United States of America. In that United States of America, we have a Constitution. And that Constitution has the Equal Protection Clause. That's all true, right?
I mean, it's supposedly.
Wow.
I mean, that's where
I just want to make sure I didn't lose my mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's what we're trying to do. And I get it. I know that people, the doom and gloom of the national universe and all the things that are happening, but there is still a place for us to stand up and say things, and at least we can do that. So, I mean, if they're going to round us all up, whatever. I guess we're going to get rounded up. But at least while I'm being rounded up, I can say the things that need to be said and point out the things that need to be pointed out. By the way, even the evil empires that have existed in the world over the years, none of them have lasted forever. So if there is some dark time in the near future, it eventually will end. So now I'm not saying that to minimize bad things that could happen, or that I believe that it should happen. But I will say that at least I can say what I need to say as the city burns. All right.
This too shall pass. This too shall pass. Yeah, I mean, and look, this is a perfect example of some of the stuff that I've been talking about, we've talked about here, but this is just acceptable.
Yeah, it's normal for those officers to be allowed to not be held accountable, and for excuses to be made. And even you can see some of the posts already in that post, and also in the situation with the Shrewsbury officer who yanked the kid out of the car.
Yeah,
in a blatant act of police brutality, just blatant, on camera, everything, doesn't care about it, right? And that you can see in the post that there's people who respond like, well, yeah, but what about the other person? Well, that's the problem, is that it doesn't matter what the other person does. What matters is what the officer does, because he is a police officer, and a police officer has to be held to a higher standard for them to be trusted, for them to help hold civil society together. We have had a giant undermining of trust in our society over the past, a bunch of decades. And by the way, for many people, that trust never existed because they existed in a different, separate society, right? A separate society where they didn't have access to the same things as everybody else. But that trust has been spread across all sectors of society. And if you don't see that, I don't know where you're at. I just don't know where you're at. I mean, how many more tarnished leaders do we need? How many more people who have been stealing money? How many more people can we have that were, having sex with the secretary? How many more scandals do we need before we start to take it seriously that our whole society has been undermined from whatever version of society we thought, that we thought we had? You know what I mean? I think we have a message.
Oh, I was just frozen, looking really stupid.
Everyone should be held to a standard. I don't even know what that means. So I don't know. I again, police officers, if you take the badge, if you take an oath and you swear all these things, you should be held to a higher standard. It just is what it is. I don't care if you don't agree. I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, this is the culture rot that, I've been talking about for years. I know you've been talking about a long time, and many others have been talking about much longer than us.
And we didn't start it. We just having the conversation.
Yeah, it's and well, we can talk about the special meeting and whatnot in a little bit. Looks like the response to the city solicitor's response to the alleged open meeting violation filed by local reactionary, and quoted by or cited by the mayor in a press release last week after Councilor King announced he would challenge for mayor. City solicitor's memo says, "Nah, it's a maybe." it says that there was something. The topic was something that may come before them and has been discussed at inside City Council and the school committee. I should probably give the backstory. Councilor King, Councilor Haji, and Councilor Nguyen put out a press release at one point that said it was from the members of the Education Committee and a local personality filed an open meeting violation complaint stating that they never had a meeting, which they hadn't, and to issue this as a body, as a committee, they would have had to have had an official meeting and voted to do so. And then the mayor last week, after Councilor King announced he would run for mayor, Mayor Petty responded with releasing a press release that, among other things, chided Councilor King for exactly this. I think the relevant part is, to the contrary, I'm quoting, to the contrary, the Attorney General's office has determined that an email was not an improper deliberation because it solicited committee members to participate in a demonstration, which is considered a form of individual speech rather than a matter of public business in the committee's jurisdiction. She also, the city solicitor also says that, in closing, that in the future, this should probably happen in a meeting. But it was not a strong rebuke of their, vicious violation and total disregard for the open meeting law. Ultimately, I'm assuming that the Attorney General's office will make the determination. But, I would characterize the city solicitor's memo as, this isn't great, but, probably shouldn't do this. It was not a, oh boy, did you guys screw up.
Right. So this is interesting to me. The reason why it's interesting is because I think that maybe this indicates something grander. And I don't want to go too far down the line, but I'm surprised at this release from the city solicitor. I agree with the city solicitor's general understanding of this situation. If you read the open meetings law, there is room for email exchanges between members as long as they're then listed in the minutes of the following meeting, right? So if you do have
they're not deliberations,
yeah. So that is allowed. And so in this case, there was a letter passed around, they agreed to the letter, and then they released the press release, right? And so to me, it was always a nothing burger. But what is interesting is that the city solicitor decided to release this information, indicating maybe there isn't as much support for this, or maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe there is a willingness on the city manager's part, because the city solicitor definitely represents the city manager, to not get involved, right? And this was that's how I read this. It's like, okay, we're not coming and helping anybody here. We're just going to step out of this. And so good for them, because they shouldn't be involved in playing politics at all, right? And they shouldn't. But also, we've talked about this a bunch of times. The city solicitor has no business in the city council's business. The city solicitor represents the city, and in this particular case, sits at the behest of the city manager, right? And so, although, if the city manager wasn't there, it would be the next city manager, but the city manager supposedly represents the city executive department, right? And the operations of the city of Worcester. So whatever answer they gave really is immaterial, because the city council has no legal representation to be able to argue on their, what would be correct or not correct. So
and I want that sounds kind of wordy. I want to boil it down for folks that your elected officials rely on somebody else's lawyer when they need a lawyer.
That's a great way to say it. Exactly. The city manager's lawyer. But the city manager's lawyer can't really give them advice, because in this particular case, there is no, as the city manager has just recently said, the city manager has no jurisdiction over interpersonal stuff on the city council. Literally, we just heard that from the city manager, and the city solicitor supported that. So realistically, this legal advice has no standing anyways, because the city manager has no jurisdiction. So then it doesn't matter. It's a nothing burger attached to a nothing burger covered with cheese. That's it. Like put a little pickle on there, and I'm allergic to pickles too. So
Yeah. So it seemed like that was going to be a big political weapon here in the near term. I would assume that this diffuses some of that. Of course, it all depends on what the open meeting law division of the Attorney General's office says, right? Because they'll get the final say.
And there's this thing going, we talked about it a little bit, whether the mayor officially announces for whatever. So, there's been this thing going back and forth about the mayor, whether or not he's made an official announcement. I don't know what to say, but he's definitely answered Manny on our show multiple times that he was running for mayor and city council again. He said that more than one time on our show. But then in every announcement from the Telegram and Gazette, which apparently is the propaganda arm of the mayor of Worcester, right? They keep saying that he hasn't actually announced, and there's like an announcement coming in the future, even though one, he has a fundraising committee which has raised a really significant amount of money for city council race, and two, he pulled papers. So I mean, I don't know how to say what's going to be said, but maybe that's a formality because he's the mayor. I don't know. But there's this weird thing going back and forth. So maybe we won't see if it'll be diffused until there's an official announcement. Maybe there'll be a big ceremony of some kind, with a gavel. He certainly seemed like running because he was at the Ella conference put on by Labo, and he also stopped by the Irish Festival on Saturday. So he certainly seems like he's running.
Yeah, he's always everywhere. But yeah, I mean, all signs are that he's running. But I mean, shockingly, as as indie media, your reporting gets passed right over by legacy media. We're gonna get to a story. We're gonna get to a story about that in just a second. I feel your pain.
One random thing. For some reason, the Telegram and Gazette blocked me from Worcester Eats, and I don't know why. That's just a random thing. But they're the admin for Worcester Eats, and for some reason they blocked me. And I emailed them and asked them why, and I haven't heard a response yet. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll have to public records request that, file some kind of fancy.
How you gonna? Yeah,
maybe it's because I don't like Ziggy bombs. Is that what it is? I don't know. I mean, is there stuff? Maybe I did something wrong. Did I not like what's his name? What's the pizza that everybody argues about there? I love Frankie's, maybe because I don't like their pizza. Is that what it is? Is that where I got blocked?
That who knows? Who knows? For the first time in, I'm not sure exactly how many years, but in the neighborhood of 20, I'm guessing. The union that represents lieutenants, sergeants, and captains at the Worcester Police Department has new leadership. Sergeant Rick Cipro and Sergeant Petroni have apparently elected not to run again, and the new head of that union is Captain Matthew Early.
That's right. By the way, I knew this months ago because Captain Early told me this at a city council meeting. Which is interesting because the election hasn't officially happened yet, but we already know who the leadership is, so that's very interesting. I like how that process plays out. These two officers, not just the lieutenants, but the vice president there, Petroni is he both? Which one is he?
He was 504,
right?
I forget which one is which now, but yeah, I mean the one that he was the vice president and Cipro was the president of that.
Right. Yeah. So we got to change over. I mean, they've been there for a long time, and they've been they've been the running buddies of the Facebook page for the unions for a long time. A lot of commentary coming out of those guys. Hey, I wonder if Mayor Petty remembers when Cipro called him Hitler. Did anybody forget about that?
I wasn't Cipro that called him that. But
was it? It was. I'm pretty sure it was Cipro. Cipro posted it in the union thing.
It was somebody in that group that he runs.
Oh, it was someone in the group called him Hitler, and he was the administrator of the account.
Correct.
So he had to apologize for that. Okay, all right. Okay.
Wasn't take it down, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, he had to take it down after offending. You know what I mean? That was COVID policy, right? But that was that. I think so, but I'm not. Wearing masks or something. So
something.
just for the officers who are watching in the chat, right? I love my friends, my buddies who are texting me wild right now with stuff. That Facebook group hasn't really covered you guys in glory over the years that it's existed. Man, you guys have done a lot of stuff in there. You're always having to apologize for it. I would just shut it down and just come over to some of the various groups that you can interact with Tom and I, and just call us Nazis or whatever. You know what I mean? Just come on over and call us names, and we can just have fun calling each other names back and forth. There's no reason to hide behind a union, a wall over there at the Facebook group. I mean, realistically, what benefit are you getting in that group when you constantly have to apologize for what's going on over there? Or, to be honest with you, Tom, just own what people say over there. Just own it. Just be you. You know, be free. Be free to be as controversial as you want. But either way, it looks like Sam is upset. I don't like I Love Frankie. I just the chat.
Yeah,
I know.
Rick Zipro was on this here podcast at one point.
That's
did
right.
a one-on-one with me. I was as surprised as anybody, but when I met him, that we actually got along quite well. Good guy. Don't agree on everything, but you don't have to, right? I don't know Sergeant Petroni at all. Met him, I think, once. I met him, I think, exactly once in my life.
I've met him a few times, and he and I, we're always consistently going back and forth about his nonsense, because he likes to post things on Facebook, which is foolish.
People do post things on Facebook. And after that, look, unions should represent their members. It's the job of the other side of that equation, especially with the public union. The other side of that negotiation is the one that has to say no. So I've kind of got beyond this blaming the unions thing. I used to kind of hold that opinion that police unions are not helpful to getting to a better place. But it's not their job. Their job is to represent their members, and certainly that leadership team did that. And I don't know if they're headed toward. If they were head of the union for that long, you imagine retirement isn't too far off. Maybe years, but not. There's less in front of them than there is behind them. So, regardless of our differences, good luck to those guys.
Yeah, so I think that it's always good to have changeover in organizational leadership. I think that I know that you don't agree with this. I'm a big believer in term limitations in a bunch of places, because I think that once you're in a place for a long time, you change, and you're no longer the person that people voted for. And so, I think that even in these roles in particular, this is internal representative stuff. And I find it hard to believe that the union roles that they played didn't affect their jobs on the force, because they both were, full-time officers, but those union roles also take up full-time responsibilities. And I find it hard to believe that they were able to be effective at either role. And so, one of them suffered, in my opinion. And so I think that those should be either part-time roles, or they should be by retired officers or officers who aren't actually active duty police officers. But that's a bigger conversation about municipal unions, because I think I don't have a problem with unions. I think unions are for folks that have a hard time negotiating for themselves, and often organizations like the city or the state or the federal government will leverage things that they have against groups of people. And so unions are there to protect people from those leverages if you're not able to negotiate for yourself. And so I have no problem with them. I support them. But I do think that there should be changeover on a regular basis. And I think it's just good for the sake of the union that they have different people, younger people coming in and changing over. So Captain Early is not exactly a young buck. So he's not like he's 20. And by the way, he's going to see that. He's going to say something to me on Tuesday. But which, by the way, I let me give Captain Early some credit, and I think that people should understand this. He is a part of usually like an event kind of response team. He's involved with like city hall things and demonstrations and outside events outside of the city, and he's known literally among the officers and among the city as the guy who calms things down, and he generally does. His team of officers are like de-escalators. And so I've given him credit as he's moved up. He's very calm. There's been several of the more passionate meetings over the past few months, and he's been there, and he's the officer who does not respond to people screaming at him, calling him names. He's very rarely rattled, and so maybe that's good. That's good to have someone like that in leadership. And how that translates from the force to the union, I don't know. It's just an interesting thing.
Yeah. That's interesting because if you remember one speaker during that not a riot on December 17th rather, actually absolutely just ridiculed as ridiculous the idea that de-escalation is important. And so, to have the juxtaposition there is its own something.
Yeah.
All the words I thought were dirty to insert there, so I want something.
And so I've gotten some pushback on that too, Tom, about the idea of de-escalation, and I find that the people who don't like de-escalation as a practice are usually angry people, already upset and wanting to justify their emotional responses to situations. Now, it's interesting because I have also argued at the municipal committee and in the city council itself that I want councilors to be able to express themselves freely, including up to the point of F-bombs. One, because that's the Constitution of the United States. And so if I want to call you a name, I should be able to call you a name. But also because I think it reveals something about our leadership. We should see them under duress and see how they respond. And that really helps you to understand who that person is. So I'm not saying that profanity or getting angry or getting emotional is always bad. I think sometimes it's valuable. But in the case of officer de-escalation, what we're dealing with in those situations is maybe there's a person who has been escalated to the point of committing a crime, and maybe they have a weapon, or they have a hostage, or they have some situation that could lead to someone being further harmed. De-escalation is a tool that often scientifically has led to a lessening of harm. And so that's why officers, and by the way, the national organization of police chiefs, I forget the name of it, the national, the Brotherhood of Officers at the national level, they all overwhelmingly support that. So to hear one of our officers get up there and say it has no value when the majority of officers around the country actually agree that it has value is silly. Now, of course, we see that there's the kind of on the ground folks that think that it's okay to just shoot from the hip, like we're at the OK Corral, right? So bang bang, get that kind of stuff out there. That I just don't think that that's the way it should be. I think we should try to aim for no harm at all. I get it if you get to a situation where there's a person waving a gun around, right, and they have already hurt somebody, there's a sense of justice, frontier justice, that they should just be taken out because they've already done some harm. But then there really is no opportunity for public healing if we just continue death. Every time death is added, we have harm that is hard to deal with. And so it sucks to have to take people to trial, and it sucks to have to, maybe they go to jail.
Having laws and stuff.
Right. Like having to go through, our process. But that's the thing, to have a society. Remember, the Constitution, like any other government creating document, is a compact between the people, and the people then we then give more authority over us. And in some place we kind of lost that idea that that maybe those people that we gave more authority would be doing things in a certain way, because if we go back to how England treated us, this was very much what the redcoats did. They would put boots to the faces of people, right, and shove bayonets and single shot musket rifles into people's faces and execute searches without warrants and those kind of things. And so this very much feels like, if in a modern context, what was going on back then that led to the revolution. So I guess if you want that to continue, well, then what the next step usually is in the fall of a nation: revolution. Do we want that? Is that what people are calling for? I mean, I know that happens in the cycle of empires, but is that what we really want? Isn't there an opportunity, because of the uniqueness of the United States, that maybe we could avoid that? Tom, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, we're not close to that. People still have food.
I don't
That's what it
know,
comes down
dude.
to.
There's some grocery stores without enough eggs.
Well, and the eggs are $10. So this has all been, kind of hunky dory, but now I'm gonna get mad.
Oh, 'cause of this other article.
Yeah. So speaking of being passed over, overlooked as independent media, I know who spurred. So there's a piece by again Brad Petrishin at the TNG. Was the police working too many hours? City Commission members concerned. And this is something brought by Randy Feldman to the Human Rights Commission about hours that officers are working and how does it correlate to or does it correlate to complaints, and how does it correlate to job performance more explicitly. Now I know where Randy got that idea, the kind of the inspiration for starting to ask questions about that. It was a piece in, you might know this publication, it's called This Week in Worcester, that was published on January 9th. It's titled 6 Ways to Reform the Worcester Police Department, and explicitly talks about number of total hours worked in the section about detail reform. So,
wait, are you saying that you wrote an article, Tom, about this exact subject?
in part with 6 ideas for actual substantive reform, which nobody's interested in. So anyway, there's my little woe is me story. But the gist of it is, and I too, like Randy, thought it was up to 80 hours a week a police officer could work, in combined regular time, overtime, and detail hours. And the union folks, Mr. Early, who we mentioned, in Thomas Duffy II, not Junior II, gave quotes.
That right.
Gave quotes to the Telegram. They first, at one point, they chid Feldman for getting the number of hours wrong. It's not 80. They can actually work up to 96 after the last contract. Apparently, that wasn't changed.
Gotta get that right.
Apparently that wasn't changed on the city website. So that's what I want, is somebody walking around with a gun working 96 hours a week. I think we should all support that if you're insane. And I just want to read a couple of the quotes. Mr. Duffy says, the commission, without a shred of data, speculated that WPD overtime creates officers that engage in excessive force, are unduly stressed, or fail to perform properly. There was no data presented to support such a wild claim. So Mr. Duffy apparently does not believe that people who are tired and overworked in a difficult job, he doesn't believe that affects them in the dangerous situations they're in, where they might have to make a split-second decision. Their reaction time, their ability to react, their judgment, whether you work 40 hours or you work up to 96 hours, is exactly the same once you put on the RoboCop of Worcester Police Department badge. For the rest of us humans who aren't immortal, according to the way this guy talks, we get tired. But the superhumans on the Worcester Police Department never get tired.
Well, no, but Tommy, so I think what Thomas Duffy II, got to get that right, is trying to tell you that when he beats up residents of the city of Worcester with his group, the Jump Out Boys, it's usually like only 10 hours into their shift for the week, right? They only work on they work very short shifts. They don't always show up for work. They're often not in uniform. Apparently they're special. And so, he's telling you that when he beats people up, he normally does that, in the course of the regular, working operation. So I think he's speaking from experience, Tom. Because he is.
Yeah,
I mean, like the guy, why would that guy be allowed to answer any of these questions? How stupid is the police department leadership? And I'm saying this directly to Chief Saw. How is that guy allowed to answer?
Hold on. The patrolman elected him as their leader.
Oh, you guys, man. You guys are unbelievable. That guy is allowed to speak for you. Unbelievable. Just running roughshod over the city of Worcester.
And Mr. Duffy also said that
funny, Tom. He's doing it in their faces. He's doing it right in their faces.
Yep. And Ms. Duffield also said that many other public employees work up to 30 to 50 hours consecutively during snow emergencies in other departments. That's an emergency, not every week.
Okay, so let's talk about that because we just had experience with plow drivers operating during multiple storms over the course of 5 days, right? There was 3-storm period over 5 days. And you know what they didn't do well? They didn't perform well because we still have snow piled up all over the city, and it led to just so much stuff that's unbelievable. So how can he reasonably say this? Why are there rules in place for nurses not to work this many hours? Why are there rules in place for firefighters? Why are there rules like that for normal conditions? Why do those rules exist? And why wouldn't they exist for a police officer? This is for police officers to maximize income. That's the only reason that rule is in place. It's so that they can get up to apparently 56 hours of overtime / detail pay. No wonder we're paying officers $200,000 a year in these nonsensical numbers. That's why. And then, by the way, the question that the human rights member brought up, which I think is very valid, is that we are short officers. We hear all the time, and their request is for them to expand the budget, right? They want more money. But if you reduced the amount of overtime and maybe didn't have as many $200,000 officers, maybe you would have more money to hire other officers, right?
So
maybe the traffic department, which I don't know.
So
maybe you could hire.
The problem is that, I mean, the cost of health insurance benefits, right, and all that stuff. That stuff doesn't change,
sure.
Right? So if you're adding employees, so it's not a direct comparison hours for hours because of benefits, and it's really hard to figure that out because there's family and individual, and asking for data from this city on that would be like, just.
But you know it's interesting, Tom. If this city was the most transparent management of the city that's ever existed, which I believe City Manager Batista has said that was his intention, for it to be the most transparent of all time, then maybe we would have access to data that would be easy to make those comparisons. But my thought is just that obviously, if you get into the 70th hour, I know the general working conditions in Massachusetts, right? So, overtime after 8 hours on a day for municipal operations, and then overtime after 40 hours accumulated in the week. So let's just say you had an officer who worked 4 days in a row, 4 12-hour shifts. They're actually getting more overtime than just over the 8 hours, right? Because they accumulate 40 at some point in the middle of the fourth day, and they start to get that double time now. So now you get in not just time and a half, but you're getting double time, and it compounds and compounds and compounds. If that same officer now on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday gets called to work a shift outside of Polar Park, right now you have an officer dealing with it. So let's not even say that officer is tired on the first 4 days. Let's say that he's able to bang those 12s. Okay, that's fine. But what about on Friday when he's now doing his second baseball shift, right? And he's on his fifth day of working for the city, and there's a kid who jumps out into the traffic, right? I mean, that because we live in Worcester, and they decided to put a ballpark in the middle of Kelly Square, and it's not like the drivers of the city have responded well to that, right? Because we still have people who drive like idiots. His reaction times are naturally going to be not the best, right? I mean, we say that about truck drivers. We say that about every other job, but somehow a police officer on the 94th hour of the week isn't going to be tired. I would say, Tom, that you and I and the Human Rights Commission are actually pro-police in saying that those officers shouldn't be working that long because we're trying to protect the officers. Thomas Duffy, as a patrolman union leader, asking for those hours and saying that it's not, is not representative of caring about those officers, because he's okay that you make bad decisions when you're exhausted. So think about that next time you vote for who's going to lead you, because he doesn't care about you. He only cares about maximizing his paycheck and the paycheck of his cronies who get all of those jobs. So that. So the regular officers that are out there that don't get the overtime, that are consistently passed over for the special group of people, right? We hear about that all the time too. Remember that when you're voting for the patrolman officer's leadership next time. Remember that that's what he does, and that's what he cares about, because he doesn't care about you. But This Week in Worcester is pro-police and is pro rested officers who have healthy lifestyles. That's where we are over here at this.
And if you a little overboard, and if you go to my piece about this, where I said I mentioned this, what was actually in the piece is that any cost savings from, I said obviously to do this would have to look at using alternative personnel for some details, and that any cost savings should go into increasing base salary, because what we don't want to do is, of course, rip the livelihood out of from cops. But the days of making 250 and 300K would probably come to an end. But that's a very very small group of people, a fairly small group of people. And also Randy Feldman mentioned that, and they said, well, the base salary should be higher, but we still want to work 96 hours a week. It's
right. And so then again, you can't argue that you have shortage of officers when you can't allocate the funds the right way. And again, I understand that hours and benefits and health insurance and all the other stuff that's attached to that. I get that, paying into pensions, paying into these things. And of course, these entitlements that we've attached to municipal operations, they're going to continue to expand because of inflation, yada, yada, yada. All those things are true, and we need to account for that in how we budget for the city. But see, this really comes down to the argument that people have made about reallocating funds for different things. So if there's a cap on the hours, let's say the cap was just dropped out. I don't know, Tom, let's say it was only 70 hours. 70 hours. That means an officer can get 30 hours of overtime. And I want to ask you, if you worked a regular job, let's say you worked at Mickey D's, right? $20 an hour now to work as a burger flipper at Mickey D's, and you got 30 hours of overtime, that'd be a pretty decent paycheck, right? So I'm not arguing for police to be paid less. I'm saying that there should be a cap for safety. So you can't say you're for safety and believe that 96 hours is a normal operating process. By the way, even our current president of the United States for the military says that all military personnel, unless they're in active duty war conditions, should be capped at 80 hours. That's at the national level. So why would the same job, which we see the officers wearing their reverse flags that they're going into war, right? That's what they wear on their shoulders, that the same conditions that apply to our military wouldn't apply to the police. Why wouldn't it? What can anybody explain that to me? The just rank hypocrisy. And by the way, we have other bigger cities with much larger police forces with lower caps. Why is Worcester different? What makes Worcester different that they need 96 hours?
Because when they put the badge on, they get superhuman powers.
Oh, special. Worcester officers are different than every other police department. Right. Okay. Yep. It just makes no sense. But here's the thing about the majority on the city council, Mayor Petty and his special 5 friends, they will not hold this specific thing accountable. They will not in negotiations. And I get it, the city manager is the one who negotiates the contracts. Get it? I understand. Mm-hmm. But as Mayor Petty has said, you have the 6 votes. You get to put the city manager in place who then negotiates the contracts. That is what has to happen. You mentioned this before, Tom. You can't blame the unions for getting the most, right, exactly, for their members. But what we can do is ask our city to negotiate better on behalf of the people, because an officer on his 95th hour cannot possibly be as good as an officer on his 39th hour. There's just no way. I don't believe it. There's no one who's ever going to argue with me that that's the same. Can an officer who's on his 95th hour still be a hero? Sure. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but their cognitive judgment is impaired. It 100% is impaired, and we need to cap that number, and it'll help us with the budget a little bit. Maybe not much, but we could stand to have savings somewhere in the budget. Well, why not have a little bit more here?
I honestly don't think it'll help us in the budget, because it's it could may require more hires, or I don't know if you do something alternative with the details. But of course, God knows what would God knows the behavior we would see if that was actually proposed.
Hey, you think we could get Elon to come look at the Worcester police budget? Maybe he'll come down and start doing some shopping.
No, thank you.
What do you mean, no thank you? There's got to be a $96,000 toilet in there somewhere that we got to get rid of.
Yeah, it's just, and what about, from what I understand, I have yet to meet him. I have yet to meet the new officials President, Captain Early. I don't know
I'll
him,
introduce you to him next time you're at City Hall.
but from what I understand, he is a massive proponent of civil service, which is really disappointing. And because I'm not sure what a bubble test where you memorize information can tell you about how an officer is going to perform on the job, or even if he's going to be an a-hole to everybody he meets. And I work a lot, and I sit here just watching my ass get wider, and I'm a prick when I've been up too long or worked consecutive days, long hours, and again I'm just sitting here. So I would imagine it would have an effect on the way people are treated, which kind of has is a big part of your your public relations issues. And but of course, none of that's true. Nobody believes that. Just ask Mr. Duffy in a second. Nobody believes that. The whole DOJ report was and I quote, because of one, I forget, actually, I don't remember exactly. I think it was despicable person, he said. I think that's what he said. One despicable person. This man's a propagandist. And, do you know what the largest law enforcement agency in the country is? Are you aware?
The new NYPD?
No, actually, it's the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department.
Oh, the Los Angeles Sheriff's. Okay, all right.
They also have people within that department that have special names for their little groups inside, which many investigations have identified as gangs, literal gangs. So, I get a little skeptical when people make up names for themselves.
Yeah, usually when there's a club, it's never a good case. Although I'm happy to sell anybody a Dead of Winter T-shirt, and you can be in the Dead of Winter Club. I'm happy to do that. $30. Reach out to me. I'll take care of you. So I got green ones for St. Patrick's Day. Hey.
Like, so somebody actually, suggests something that's quality of life related. Like, you know what? Police officers should have time. I'll agree. Is it the most stressful job in the world? And according to studies, it's not. But I agree. Police officers walk into horrific situations, often not knowing what they're walking into. Sure. I can't imagine if turning up at the sites of suicides or violent crime. Even if it's after the fact, you're still looking at something that's horrific. Yeah. I can't imagine coming onto a scene where there's injured or hurt or kids, whether it was intentional or not. Listen. I don't want it. I'm not asking to do it. And there's a reason. But when you deal with those things, maybe it might be a good thing to think about work-life balance, and it might think about people having time for recreation and time with family and the things that people do to keep themselves sane.
Yeah. I would also say this, that, there's a ton of studies that say that if you work, physical labor, right? Most of the officers have to drive around and move around vehicles, and they're walking and moving and doing things a lot. That when you have that level and you don't have, good time in between to rest, whether it's sleep at night or just have relaxation, that your stress levels increase, and it makes it harder and harder for you to be healthier. And we've just listened to them talk about in some of these reports that have come out that one of the number one things that officers face is heart disease. It's a huge problem among the police officers, that they often have heart attacks and are unhealthy in their older age. So how is a higher level of hours not contributing to that? I mean, it's just silly. So again, to the officers who are, always loving to send me text messages throughout the show, make sure that you vote correctly in your next union leadership meeting. That Mr. Duffy doesn't care about your health, because he doesn't care about your health at all. He wants to make sure you get those 96 hours in. Also, I'm sure there's officers who have suffered from being forced overtime is a common problem. I've heard many officers talk about, I just got forced because so and so called out and such, and it sucks because I'm on the bottom of the list. All those things, I hear that all the time from officers. Again, these caps, if the caps were lower, it would make it less likely that kind of practice would continue. And I mean, of course, Tom, it's never like an officer regularly calls out. You know what I mean? There's no officers ever do that, right? To all of a sudden show up in front of Polo Park pulling a different gig. That's never happened.
Yeah, and I should have pointed out, Captain Early also said that he didn't understand how this issue was related to human rights. Irritable cops. I mean, any irritable human beings act differently. That's how.
Yeah. No, I'm with it, and not just irritable.
The steadfast. Hold on, I'm going to rant. The steadfast opposition to even proposing something is unbelievable. They don't want anything to change. They want to keep it exactly how it is. They can do whatever they want, and in last resort, is it goes to Bops, who washes it for them, and that's how they want to keep it.
Well, I would say, Tom, that they're negotiating openly again with the city. So it's possible that they will be okay with a lowered cap, but they would do it in exchange for something similar to the thing with the body cameras. Yeah, we'll take the body cameras, but you're going to have to pay us an extra this, that, the other thing. So, again, remember, these guys are both union leaders, right? So they use these public statements to negotiate for more money for their members. So it's often hidden. That's like a hidden thing behind their resistance.
There's no negotiation. They walk in and say, "You're giving us this," and the city folds.
Well, the city does fold. Yeah, the city does fold. I would say this to Captain Early, who I'll see on Tuesday, and I'll make sure to say this to him in person again, is that when it comes to the civil service test, I always had this question: how come it doesn't have a physical component?
Listen, civil service has been around since 1880, I believe.
But isn't that? But Tom, let's say the test is something that's needed, but why doesn't it have a physical component to that test? There's no physical performance standard that officers are held to. And we can see that because I've seen plenty of officers who are not in the best of shape, right? So let's say civil service remains, but attached to it a physical performance test, a health test, an indicator of the mental health of the officer, and then maybe there's something to be said for that. But you can't they won't let us look at that. They won't let us see if an officer has biases or maybe has issues that we don't know about. Maybe that officer suffered abuse. Maybe we don't know about that officer's childhood, and then they're in a tough situation. They make a bad decision because we're not allowed to review those things. None of this is anti-police. This is just saying that I don't want an officer who's carrying a weapon and whose job is potentially to issue lethal decision-making to not be cared for in every capacity. Mental health, physical health, and their ability to remember bubble questions. Right? I mean, that's like it has to be more than that for us to advance them up the line. And, we need to have a healthier approach to community engagement. And that's all we're saying here. We're not saying anything negative. We're talking now. Are we saying negative things about individual officers who have committed crimes? Sure. Because they've committed crimes. They should be arrested for it, just like I would be if I committed a crime. If I went right now and I decided to fill out a police report and lie about Tom, that's a crime. I should be arrested for that crime. But we have documentation at a minimum in the DOJ report that officers consistently were dishonest in their own police reports.
Which is a crime, which is a different crime, which is a crime as well. It's a different crime. It's 136(6)(a), specifically for public employees. Yep.
Right. It's still a crime, and it has an entire sentencing structure attached to it. It has a way that they investigated and determined guilt and innocence. There's a whole thing attached to it, and they've used it against certain officers in certain situations. Usually, when they don't like that officer or they need to throw them under the bus, then all of a sudden everything comes out. They filed this report. They did this. Da, 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 da. We're asking that those standards be applied universally, not just in situations. Selective prosecution should not exist within a police department. It just shouldn't. You should just have a standard, and the standard is what you apply. Well, that's all we're saying. It's really not that difficult.
We have, although I do have more rants in the chamber, if I can keep talking. We've neglected our chat. Mr. Charles Luster checking in, saying this is the first time on the show. Thank you very much, sir.
Charles is running too. Now I got to start looking at Charles a little bit more. The papers are official. He's pulled them. Now I got to really go at him.
I signed his papers actually. I ran into him the other day. Well, I'm not going to read that one, Maria, but let me know about that though, and you know which one I'm saying. And of course,
You don't want to go down that path? We could get into all kinds of stuff with that path.
No, we're not going that. But let me know. You know I'm on that.
Who else is here?
And is also my high school friend and my love as a friend, Maria, is here as well. And that's, I think, all. Where's our I'm gonna forget his name, and now I feel like a jerk. The kid that's here every week, pumping us with
Sean.
info.
Yeah. Where's Sean at? You know what I mean? We haven't gotten anything from Sean this week. Not even one silly comment towards us. Not one. You all owe me coffee.
Well, I don't know all, but you know I'll buy coffee. Come on, girl. But yeah, it's even just wanting to look at, hey, is this a thing? I mean, 80 hours a week, that's crazy. Even want to look at this, it gets this, there's pushback from that must be anti-police sentiment that Mr. Duffy kept pushing when he was in front of city council, was like, hey, maybe this doesn't help anybody. Maybe this is bad for, mental health of officers or the public or, but no, anti-police sentiment.
Does Mr. Duffy even live in Worcester? I don't know. Does he?
I don't know.
I don't
he
even
doesn't have to. I don't care if he does, really.
There's another thing that we talked about. Community policing should involve officers that are from here, raise the standard of things. Actually, Chief Saucier has talked about that. He thinks that number, the percentage of the force that is from Worcester, should actually rise up, which of course, if you think about that would lead to more minority officers. Why? Because Worcester has a higher minority population than the surrounding towns. And so that's a direct shot from the chief of police towards the common practice, which seems to be dedicated towards getting as many white officers as possible. And a lot of them happen to be Irish. I'm Irish too. We've got a ton of Irish officers running around. And so how do you change things like that? You have to make these minute policy changes. And we're not talking about a huge gap. I think Chief Saucier in his when he was first talked about becoming the chief and hoping for the job, I think the percentage that he mentioned was an increase. I think it's at 70% right now, and he wanted to increase it to 90, which is actually pretty high. I don't know that any police force has it at 90 in our state, but we could probably look into that. As far as residency components, of course, residency components also makes it harder to hire officers, right? Because sometimes there are not that many people who want to be police officers. Hey, Tom, was there any reason why local Worcester residents wouldn't want to become part of the police force? Any reason?
It's obviously anti-police sentiment, and not 20 plus years of horrific PR, and and union leaders that tell us it's all a lie. Has nothing to do with that.
Right. So
federal investigation that went on for 2 years. I wonder, but no, that had no effect on recruitment. It was really just anti-police sentiment. Ask Mr. Duffy.
Yeah, just and one person only that drove the entire thing, right? One really
only one, and I quote this. Yeah, I think it was despicable was the word he used.
Yeah,
one person. Never mind that there's videos of 2 of those incidents. And this is what I mean.
Nothing to do with the dozens and dozens of people who went up to the podium and talked about their interactions with the police department and how they went through certain things. And none of those things mean anything, because of course, Tom, you and I were anti-police because that's what we are. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can never question the blue. You must back the blue at all costs.
Yeah. At all costs. Listen, I support good cops. So if you're offended by anything I say, do the math.
Oh no, I do too. And again, I think that I actually would say this, and I know I've been very forceful, especially over the past year. There are a lot of officers who say they don't want to be associated with that stuff, and I have started to question their bravery in willingness to stand up to the leadership that's entrenched and change.
So I disagree with this totally. When you're within a culture that, I mean. Look, if you report somebody breaking policy or the law, they call you a rat, which is a phrase that's old school from gangsters. And I didn't pick the term; they did. So, that's the kind of the culture you're dealing with. I mean, there's not here. In their defense, not here. But in other, places in the country, we've seen reports of, somebody said something they weren't supposed to about somebody who they should have said something about. And, suddenly they're, there was a case in Florida. This is now going back some time. Guy was off duty, driving to his second job, doing 100 and didn't stop for the cop for like 6 miles or something. And then finally pulled over. And the person the woman who pulled him over didn't care that he was a cop and took him to jail. And I forget what the number was, but in the next week, her info had been looked up, through the internal the police database, which they're not supposed to do, hundreds of times, between people sitting outside of her house. So she said, stuff getting delivered to the house she never ordered, and all kinds of nonsense. It was an absolute harassment campaign until she quit and then sued and won, at least got some money for what she endured. That's just a case I remember because it was, the response was so horrific over, I was driving 100. What should happen? And didn't stop. What should happen? Oh, well, he's got a badge. And, apparently the difference between right and wrong is if you got a badge, you're right.
And that's the other component, that cultural component. And so I understand what you're saying. But I would say that, what's his name? Oscar Groening, you know who that guy is? Oscar Groening, I'm probably saying it wrong, but he's the accountant at Auschwitz. And he was the one who made the argument that he was so low on the totem pole. How could he be asked to question anybody? And I get it. I get what you're saying. But I don't know that we live in Nazi Germany and that it's so bad that you can't ever respond. And to be honest with you, I'm not necessarily talking about the patrolmen. I'm talking about the lieutenants, even the deputy chiefs, even the sergeants who say this to me on a regular basis, captains who say this on a regular basis, that they don't want to be associated with officers who may or may not have raped somebody or officers who are beating people down. They're in the position as leaders to make the right decision and stop hiding things in the dark. Hey, listen, I know that, we don't always get into it. We do here and there little touches, but I do believe in the Bible. And I think there's a great verse in the Bible about bringing things from the dark into the light, that it's always good to let sunlight in on things like this. Let's get it out there. Let's talk about it. I don't think any real healing can take place until we get all of the things out, until the officers who committed crimes have been arrested and go to jail, just like there are people that they sent to jail. We need to have those things happen for true healing. Otherwise, we're always going to have the little doubt in the back of our mind about whether or not the people are on our side. And shouldn't the officers be on the side of the people? Aren't they supposed to be? It doesn't make sense that they're not, right?
Yeah, it's I realize that people are jerks sometimes, and it's kind of being the cool kid now to treat police officers like garbage. But I'll use the beer garden example again. That kid, he walked up to a police officer to ask a question.
Yep. He asked, can I get into my apartment? That's what he asked. He asked, can I get into my apartment that he lived in, a building he lived in?
And of course, we have this on video, which they didn't know at the time. No body cams then, but I guess there were body cams on the scene. I read the report again the other day as a refresher.
The pilot program had already been started.
Yeah. But we saw regarding the one person that got a settlement out of the deal. We have that on video, and I timed it the other day. It's less than 4 seconds, the whole interaction. And in that time, one officer said he had multiple back and forths with him, and another officer said he issued him multiple commands before taking him down. That all happened inside 4 seconds.
Yeah.
That's not believable. Okay, so that's a lie.
Yeah, of course it's a lie.
So so when people come to approach you on the street, if you're a police officer, you very well may not be one of these, I'm sure is a vast minority of scumbags, but when people approach you, they don't know if you're one of those people.
Yeah,
it's just that simple.
Not only that, though, in that situation, there's a perfect example. All the other officers that were around in that situation, there was a ton of them. They all just went with it. There was not a single officer who thought, what's going on? This kid's not like nothing. No one saw. Yeah, it's a chaotic scene, but they're acting like it was Fallujah or something, war-torn Fallujah, and bombs were falling all around them. It wasn't that
Well,
big
I
of a
mean,
deal. It
well, it
was a
was a pretty
bar
ugly
fight,
scene.
Tom, a bar fight that they got
It was a
called
bar
to
fight
after the
that
majority of the bar fight, right?
so it was one I think it's like there's been like 5 and 10 years or something like that. I forget what the number is. I've read it somewhere of all on duty calls. Doesn't happen very often. That was one of them. There was dozens of people involved in fighting, in which then police showed up and they were involved. I can get all that. I can even get, he's on high on an adrenaline rush. He's just probably literally been in the middle of physical altercations, and this thing happened. But then he charged him with crimes, and that's unforgivable.
Yeah, no, I mean it is, and he should not have his job. He
Nope, and he
charged
does.
someone with false crimes.
And understand that this person, right this minute, can arrest you or your child or any loved one
Right.
at any moment.
If this officer is watching our show, which he from time to time I've seen his name pop across the field. You know what I mean? If this officer is watching the show tonight, he could plant evidence on you and me and have us convicted of some crime that we didn't commit, right? And then of course, the interesting thing is on the Facebook groups and the police pages of the world, they'd be like, "We always knew Tom and John were bad," and they would go right with it. They would go right with it. So I give them no excuse, Tom, to not call out illegal behavior that is not related to the badge. This badge, every time an officer commits a crime, is tarnished and the public trust is broken. It has to be restored. And the only way to restore it, in my opinion, I'm not asking everybody to agree with me, but if I was in charge, I would arrest them all and put them in jail for the time that they should serve for those crimes. And they would not work as police officers ever again. And anybody who protected them from prosecution or hid evidence or didn't follow up would be reprimanded as well, maybe lose their jobs too. I don't know.
Yeah,
You can't have a culture where officers are allowed to commit crimes and not have any accountability. You can't have that.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a pipe dream, but at least if they could not be police officers, that would be good.
I mean, we started off the show talking about the officer who decided to, start a fight at his kid's soccer game. At a minimum, that officer shouldn't be working in police anymore. He shouldn't, but he literally has a legal, collectively bargained right, if he's not convicted of a crime, to guarantee his job. So no matter what the result of this case is, unless it ends in a conviction. By the way, the conviction does not guarantee he's fired. The conviction does not guarantee he's fired.
Especially if it's a misdemeanor. If it's a felony, it's probably pretty much a guarantee. But if it's a misdemeanor, probably not.
And almost certainly this will be a misdemeanor, right? Because it's a fisticuff. It'll probably be like disturbing the peace. I don't know if he'll actually be charged with assault. Maybe I don't know. We don't know because the Northboro police. By the way, I completely agree with the Northboro police policy. I wish all cases were like that, because the Worcester police loves to release police reports on people and put out mugshots of regular people on a regular basis. So I'm sure they love that their officer's name hasn't been released yet, because they want to make sure to keep that under wraps. But they'll definitely, if they arrest some 17-year-old kid like on Millbury Street or something that's jaywalking, they'll put his picture in the newspaper immediately, right, as soon as possible.
I'm to be fair, I'm unaware of jaywalking arrests in the city.
I was definitely exaggerating there.
I don't know. We're carrying on. So I just thought it was some unbelievable things in that piece. So there's no other alternative, but you guys have to be able to work up to 96. I mean, nobody, very few people work, if anybody. It's very rare that somebody works 96 hours a week. But there's people in the around 80. The problem is that you can't really tell by just looking at the numbers, because they're guaranteed 4 hours pay. So if they show up to a thing for 2, then they're not, and of course it's impossible to figure out, probably by design. If you request detail records from the city, when you get them, they'll come with a disclaimer that the address listed is just the place where the officer will meet the client. And after that, they don't know where they are.
What do you say to that, Tom?
And then, of course, there's no, I mean, there's GPS in the cruisers, but there's no GPS, when they're out on a detail. And the slips that are signed are paper signed. But they're signed on paper. There's still a paper system for their detail hours. And of course, the only person that's ever committed fraud happens to be a 30, young, early 30s black kid, according to, to the arrest.
Right. So no one ever would mess around with detail. Again, this really gets into the way that we have the rules drawn up. Other places, other municipalities have had great success with flagmen. By the way, often flagmen and or flag people, I guess that's the right term now. Those folks that do detail work, traffic usually, are often retired police officers. And there's been a tremendous amount of success in many other municipalities. But again, Worcester is unable to change because it's a special, apparently unique city where we can never have any other thing ever happen. And if you say
I'll tell you
such a thing,
I'll tell you what it is. And I honestly think it's quite simple. Like aggressive, push for big change, push for big reform. That's not, it can't come from the chief. It can't come from the city manager. They're in the chain of command. And they can't have, for lack of a better phrase, we can't have mutiny on the ship, right? There was a few years ago, more than a few years ago, probably now, there was a situation. It was only like a dozen or 15 officers, I remember, but there was a call-out situation, what appeared to be an organized call-out, which, of course, the last administration did nothing about because it loved to just flush this stuff down the toilet and never talk about it again. In New York, when the mayor there, previous mayor said some things that the police department didn't like. At one point they stopped writing tickets in a section of the city, which in New York is a big deal. And there's other stories like this of either protests-ish from unions or signs of mutiny on the ship, right? So you can't. That pressure for big change is gonna come from outside. And the only place that, in this city where it's going to come from is the city council. And they're absolutely not going to do that. So we're kind of screwed.
Not this 6-member majority.
No, I mean, I don't know. It's, I don't even want to pick out, I don't even want to delineate that much. The system encourages them to do nothing or say nothing because anything you say, of course, when you're an elected official is a political liability. And so if you don't have to say anything, you don't. And they don't. They just get to hide behind the manager. And he takes the hits and they just protect him because they're the ones they're the appointing authority, right? And nobody says anything. I'll be interested to see in this meeting, not this Tuesday, the following Tuesday, the quote special meeting of the council. If anybody's going to actually propose an idea, a solution, a piece of the solution, anything, I'd probably not.
From the city council, probably not. I mean, I know I'm going there. I'm going there with the intent to speak about it. I'm going there with the intent to talk about specific officers. I'm going to go there with names that I think of officers who need to be arrested and prosecuted for crimes that they committed.
Yeah, you probably should not. You probably should not accuse them of committing crimes.
I will. I'm not accusing them of committing crimes. I'm stating the facts that they committed crimes, and I'm going to do it right on the mic. And I have zero fear because I don't believe there's a leader in our city that will do it. I don't believe. How about this? I even challenge the people running for city council that they will not name names. They will not talk about Thomas Duffy and his jump out boys because they're afraid of him. They will not mention this man's name. They're afraid of them. They'll not talk about Hastings and Brendan Tivnan and all these other officers who have committed crimes. I will name names. I have zero problem naming names and saying what they've done, and they need to be held accountable. Now, that's me. I'm doing that. It's not Tom. It's not This Week in Worcester. It's not Manny J Media. It's not anything else. It's just me. I'm willing to stand up because I fear not what they can do to me. And I mean, we don't live in a movie world, so I don't really believe that someone's going to like pin a case on me, but I wouldn't be surprised if something like that came along. And in the This Week in Worcester podcast was now, you had a new co-host in Maria, and maybe it'd be a 4-person panel with you, Maria, Gino, and Charles Lester, since they're all watching today. Or you guys would have great conversations while I was in jail. I just hope you would send me some canteen money. Just make sure you send me some a couple bucks. Maybe Charles will throw some money on the phone so I can give him a call on Sundays. You know what I mean? Give a call out. Maybe I'll call into the show from jail. I don't know. You know what I mean? Who knows what will happen? Right? Why not?
Yeah. So I mean, and this is my, of course, my pet cause, and is that no organization should investigate itself. I have no doubt that under this chief that the boss would be more adequate in its investigations. But it's stupid. Why would you ask people to investigate their coworkers? That's stupid. I don't care that I frankly don't care that it's the norm. Like, oh well, only a few other cities have done that, because we can't, we don't want to do anything unique until we want to do something unique, right? But I don't care.
By the way, that means you can't investigate me for embezzling from This Week in Worcester.
You can embezzle all you want, brother. There's nothing here to take. And so, what we need to do is move to a system where we have a, inspector general or something of that sort, where there's an independent, protected person who does these investigations and is the official determiner of the facts in cases within their jurisdiction, which would include the police. And then you take all of the onus right out of the police department. Some departments, this doesn't happen in a lot of places. It happens in some places, and they actually like it because it's not on them. They don't ever get accused of covering up some nonsense again, right? Because it's not their investigation.
But
that's not going to happen though. That'll never ever happen here. Won't happen.
And I want to. So Charles just put something in the chat. He wants to give the new chief a chance, and so
I love
Charles.
him.
I don't think he can have a chance because he can't investigate himself or the people that he's brought on or anything like that. What Tom is talking about is having an independent review of those same folks. It's not to go, by the way, it's not to go buck wild and take everybody down. That's not the point. The point is that there's a system in place that has led to the things that we've seen. And I do believe in Chief Saucier. I really do. I think the dude would totally arrest the cop who committed rape. 100%. What I'm saying is that there are lieutenants and captains and sergeants who have prevented those situations from being investigated, and there's not any information for this chief to be able to even go after those cops because they've been prevented from accumulating evidence. And so the only way that those cases will ever come to light and our people will be able to heal and have those things prosecuted is if an outside agency does it. It has to be somebody outside. I don't even want the DOJ to do it. I want an independently appointed board to do it because I don't even trust the DOJ to do everything right. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying somebody independent should be appointed and given powers to just go in and find everything and just get it all out in the open, clear the air, and get the stink of any tainted officer away from the officers who are trying to do their jobs. That's what I want. I don't want everybody to go down. I just want it to be cleared up.
Somebody with an investigative background who can build a team to do this stuff and issue reports when their investigations are done.
Yeah.
Mr. Lester, I certainly respect everybody pushing for a citizen review board, and if that happened alongside of this, I'd be fine with that. According to at least my research, I can't say I looked at every one, of course, but according to my research, like in Hartford, it's got no teeth. They write reports, they go to the chief then round files them, and then we just go on to the next thing. They typically don't have subpoena power or any power of law. As a civilian review of policy and stuff like I'm not against anything that has to do with with civilian review. I just think like a professional investigator to look at claims of misconduct or excessive force or whatever it might be. I think it takes, as John said, it takes a lot of the stink off of it. This person's doesn't work there. He's appointed independently. Usually, IGs can't actually be dismissed without sufficient cause. And I think it's a way to make us all feel better. Really, like if this independent person said there's no evidence here that this thing that was alleged happened, I think we're all probably more apt to have some faith in that rather than, again, people investigating their colleagues.
I think at least if they were able to, some of these like special counsel reports that we've seen over the past, basically since Clinton, right? These independent investigations into different presidents and the stuff that they've done. What you do see, at least in the ones that don't end in charges, is at least they review the behavior. Right. So like sometimes they don't end in charges, but you get to see a list. And I know, obviously Trump had a ton, but just look at the one that was into Joe Biden's moving of the documents. Let's just look at that one because that will be easier than dealing with all the Trump nonsense. Right. So in that case, the guy was allowed to go through it and say that he thought that there was most of us thought that there was kind of like a mistake that was made by an old man, which I think that we all think was probably the case. He loaded him into his car and he kept it in the garage. And so I think that there was I don't know that I would accuse Joe Biden in that case of anything nefarious, but the report at least listed the concerns. And so if you read the report, I think everybody kind of knew what that situation was. And I give credit to President Biden for allowing that investigation to be led with a special counsel. I really appreciate that he gave independence to that group. He didn't like it, and publicly they fought back against it with press releases and all that kind of stuff. But at least it was allowed to take place, and it created at least some modicum of, finality to that situation, and that kind of went away. Now, in some of the other cases, we didn't see that. Sometimes folks weren't charged with things and things like that. We're not asking necessarily for people to just go and end up in prison. But if they did commit a crime, they should go to jail just like a regular person goes to jail. That's all we're saying. It's not really that complicated. If you stole, go to jail. If what's that that Fred Armisen skit? Go directly to jail. that one. If you committed a crime and you happen to be an officer, you should do the time. Just like the officers will say to us, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. The officers should be held to the same standard that they spout. They wear T-shirts like that, right? Back the blue. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And then they get the thin blue line shirts on and all that stuff. If you're going to wear that and represent that kind of value, okay, hold yourself to the same standard. That's it. That's all we're saying. It's not really that difficult.
Yeah, and I don't think people get this about that whole documents thing. Is the difference between, say, the documents that the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago for and the documents that Biden had is the Biden people they self-reported. They said, we found these documents within, wherever it was. And, we have them and we're looking to see if there's any more. And that, usually goes a long way to how, any potential prosecution is handled. Just saying.
It does. I mean, if you listen, I've been through some stuff, right? Often when you go along and you just if the officer asks to talk to you, you just talk to them. A lot of things go away real fast. But often when you resist conversation, that's when you'll find yourself under some scrutiny. And so
we do not give legal advice here because that's terrible legal advice.
I'm not saying. So what I'm saying is that definitely use your rights. If you need an attorney, always do that. But what I'm saying is often you can talk. If you're honest, you can talk a lot of situations out. Now, unless you're a young black man driving through the West Side, then listen, all hope is lost with this police department. You know what I mean? Just what it is, according to their own internal stuff. Which is great because Chief Saucier, they don't keep the arrest or the ticket issue records. That was an interesting part of that story that they don't keep the data when they just stop someone. That's very interesting, and versus issuing tickets to people. So I wonder why the state legislature has voted that down many times. It's a state level issue whether municipalities should collect that data. Some municipalities have opted to collect that data voluntarily, right? You have to opt in. I think, is that right? I think that's how we talked about this last year. The municipalities have to opt into certain data collection for that to be provided publicly, and our state has no requirement that they capture non-arrest or non-ticketed stops. So if they pull somebody over and they just have an interaction with them, that doesn't have to be, they don't have to turn their body camera on, and they don't have to put a report in that collects data on like license, age, race. They don't have to do that. They only have to do it if they actually issue a ticket, and that's really a significant data point, because the other statistics indicate that they're pulling over folks. The racial disparity is wide. So if it's that wide on the points of contact for tickets, I can't imagine what it would be if you collected all that data and what it would look like. But we have an indication already that it's bad.
Yeah. All right. I guess I've yelled enough for one day. I just read that today. It's been on a couple days. I didn't see it. I just read it today. Yeah. Oh my God. I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding?
Was it issued on a Friday? No one. What day did it come out?
I lost it now. I closed it after we were done.
Now, Charles, you're on a
2 days ago.
Charles, you're on a watch list, buddy. They got you coming and going.
I believe it is time for, as you always say, the people's favorite part of the show.
Oh, the best part of the show. The best. Absolutely right. So obviously we're not going to talk about pizza today because I already got controversy going on with my I love Frankie's Pizza, which I'm sure the owner now is going to text me on Messenger. I'm only kidding. It's just a joke. Your pizza's fine. It's fine. You know what I mean? I'm not against your pizza. Plus, we've already done Tommy's favorite pizza. We've done his favorite chocolate. We've done his favorite candy. We've done his favorite rap group of all time, his favorite football player. I think we did basketball and hockey. We probably did baseball. I don't know if we did baseball or not. But it is a baseball-related thing because it's March and we're getting close to opening day, right? I know that baseball is the long-forgotten sport and nobody cares about it anymore. But of course, John still loves the sport where you hit a round ball with a round bat for distance, right? You're going to have to do those two things, the weirdest physics in all of sports. And so I thought a cool thing would be to ask you, Tom, is what is your favorite result at the plate? Right. So when the pitcher throws the ball, and there's a bunch of results that can happen, from the hitter. So, there could be a strike, there could be a ball, there can be a single, a double, a triple. What is your favorite result from when the pitcher throws the ball at the plate?
This would be very specific.
Yeah, very specific.
There was nothing in baseball, and I haven't watched a baseball game in forever. I've kind of moved on with my life as far as baseball. I just kind of football too. I'm pretty hockey and basketball centric when I have any sports time lately. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing, like 3-2 outside corner changeup from Pedro. That was basically unhittable.
That's a great answer. That is a great answer. My thing is, do you remember? I don't know. So I used to. I'm such a baseball geek. I used to score every game. I loved it. My favorite two player. We've talked about this before. My favorite player of all time is Mo Vaughn, and Mo Vaughn in 1995 he won the MVP, and the hit dog. He was the best. I love the hit dog. He won the MVP with. Not the best season. He beat out Albert Bell, who all the baseball writers hated, right? So I'm not saying that he was the best player in baseball because he wasn't. Albert Bell clearly was. Dude was hitting bombs with one hand. It was just ridiculous. And this was pre-steroid, so Albert Bell was just jacking them out, right? But Mo Vaughn hit a triple against the Yankees in early September of that year, and the Red Sox ended up winning the division that year. And then they beat Cleveland and then lost in the second round, right? But they hit a triple. And Mo Vaughn was a large man. I don't know if anybody remembers.
He was a large man.
Being a large man. But anyways, Mr. Vaughn, probably like about 6 feet from the third base bag, he leapt in the air. You can go watch this on YouTube. He does. I think it was against the Yankees. He leapt, and the reason I remember is because Wade Boggs was already playing for the Yankees at that point. So of course everybody hated Wade Boggs. He's playing third base, and there's a great picture of Mo Vaughn airborne and Wade Boggs like looking like this, like. So that's my favorite ever result of a batted ball as a triple by Mo Vaughn against the Yankees. So it was my favorite.
I guess I know second place is Ortiz when he used to bunt against the shift was hilarious.
None of them do that anymore. It's the best thing. He would bunt for a double, dude.
They don't shift. You can't shift anymore.
Oh yeah, they did. They did change the rule. By the way, if Ichiro, I'm convinced now that they took the shift away. If Ichiro wants to come back and grab another 1,000 hits real quick, he probably could, because he's still. I've seen him doing the Japan stuff. He could still hit. But we didn't talk about the Hall of Fame real quick. The jerk who didn't vote for Ichiro Suzuki.
Unbelievable.
Boo that guy.
Like, fire that person into the sun.
Just get rid of that guy. Like, what are you doing? How do you not vote for this guy? He was one of the best hitters of all time. And he came when he was like
unbelievable.
Not only that, he came when he was like 75. Like he was already old, and he still banged out 3,000 hits in like 15 years. It was just ridiculous. 250 hits a year. Guy was unbelievable. One of the best ball players.
I remember sitting. I must have been on the third base side, not quite behind the plate, but close, right? And at Fenway when they were playing Seattle one game, and you could just see, from the angle, like how quick, right in front of you where I was sitting, how quickly he got out of the box and down the line. It was unreal. It was unreal.
It was. And not only that, you could see the way every team, he put pressure. Anyone see the Netflix docs? You mean the 17th version of the 2004 Red Sox thing that they did? Yeah, I saw that. Of course I did. I watch all the junk on the Red Sox. I love hearing Kevin Millar, say the same thing over and over and over again. By the way, Kevin Millar, if you listen to him talk about 2004, he was the MVP and he hit 85 home runs. I swear to God, Kevin Millar was the best player in the history of baseball. If you just listen to Kevin Millar,
since we're on a sports theme. Although probably the right organizational decision, I don't even know. Let's pour one out for Brad Marchand, who is the most annoying hockey player that's ever existed, as far as on the ice, and has had a Hall of Fame career. And I'm sad to see him. I'm going to be sad to see him suit up for somebody else.
Yeah,
I hope he goes and wins. And I hope he goes and wins a cup.
I do. I'm pro Brad Marchand. Even when he was licking people, it's what a
that was hysterical.
Well, he's hysterical. One of the best left wings ever, though. He's a great winger. I think there's a chance. This kind of reminds me of who was it? It just reminds me of a guy in the early '90s. Who left? Oh, Ted Donato. So Ted Donato got traded the year before his contract ended. He went and won a cup with somebody, and then he came back to the Bruins the next year and signed like a retirement deal.
Yeah, so there's some speculation about that, but who knows?
Yeah,
I'm
pro Brad Marchand. They've torched this team though.
Oh, I mean they should have. It's garbage.
They should have done it years ago, though. Before all this, you know what I mean. They should have done these trades some years back.
I mean, we're gonna go down a wormhole. Just shows to you. I think what we're seeing really displays just how all-time world-class a player, my personal favorite player, Patrice Bergeron was.
Oh yeah, he made them good for so long. He just was so dominant and he just underappreciated great player for sure. Meanwhile, by the way, the Celtics. I want to since we're just doing real sports takes real quick. The Celtics are going to win the championship again. Every series in 6. I don't care who they're playing. I've seen enough of the season to know Celtics in 6 over everybody. It's
hopefully,
over.
Hopefully, even though the Lakers were on a roll and the Celtics just yesterday. I mean, if the Lakers keep doing what they're doing, we could have a Lakers Celtics final, and that's always fun.
Yeah. But LeBron can't play defense anymore, and neither does, and Luka doesn't play any defense.
Luka's allergic to defense.
He's so bad on defense. He doesn't want to do it. He just doesn't want to do it.
No interest. Did you see? Last thing we'll go.
Yeah.
This is well past the end of the show.
Yeah.
Did you see? Guy used to be a hockey player. He's now an analyst. Paul Pizzonette was invited involved in a fight in Arizona. Did you see the thing with Marchand? So they have Marchand on the show a few days after this, and Pizzonette asked Marchand a question, and Marchand starts the answer off with, "Oh, it's a pretty boring question, Paul," and then he answers it, and they go around, and then they come back to Biz, and he's like, since my first question was boring, did you you go to Turkey in the offseason? You get some plugs in your head, in your hair? You look a little more thick up there than you were last year. And classic Marchand goes, "Nah, Biz, I was just trying to look like the guys who beat the brakes off you the other day." It's fantastic. Fantastic. Classic Marchand moment. That's all over YouTube or whatever. If you want to go find it. But anyway.
Dude, you know what happened since the last time we talked? Well, maybe we just didn't talk about it last week, but John Cena turned heel. What happened? Does anybody care about this anymore?
No. Most of us grew up.
Not me.
I haven't paid attention
all
to that
for
stuff
Jey Uso. I yeet all day. Yeet Jey Uso, and I want Cena. I like Cena as a bad guy. Always wanted a bad guy Cena. Love it. Absolutely love it. Cena as a bad guy, Rock is a bad guy.
The closest I get to any interest in wrestling anymore is I remember recently I ran across a YouTube or something, a video somewhere of guys breaking character, which I thought was
all
fun.
The wrestling fans are checking in the chat.
Are they? Guys breaking character and like when wrestlers save other wrestlers, like moves gone wrong and then they pull it out or whatever, and dudes don't get hurt. Like that kind of stuff is cool.
Yeah.
And I really like the Undertaker's podcast. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's an interest. I like it too. I think he's cool. He's an interesting guy. I like that they kind of like are talking about more stuff. They let it out into. We all know what's going on. We've all always known if you really were a fan of wrestling. The people who are shocked by it's pre-written. Yeah, so is the NFL. So we can talk about that later.
Oh, come on now. We don't traffic in conspiracy theories here.
Watch the X-Files, kids. Make sure you go back. Watch the X-Files.
Well, you should watch the X-Files. It was one of the greatest series ever. But you're telling me,
Smokey
dude,
Man, Buffalo Bills. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. What happened? What happened was when what's the dude for Philly? They just won the title. The running back. He's incredible.
Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, when Saquon jumped over, when he hurdled the dude backwards, that was scripted. You telling me? Get out.
No, that's not scripted. The athleticism is not scripted. Just like the athleticism in the WWE is not scripted. They can do unbelievable stuff because they're unbelievable athletes. The results are scripted. That's it. Unless you're Hogan, and Hogan always cheats and never wants to lose clean, and that's why everybody hated him. And I hated him when I was a kid. Macho Man all day, baby. Hulk Hogan sucks.
All right. With that said, we better get the hell out of here. So that is the end of the show. Really ended 20 minutes ago. That is the end of the show. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Mr. Lobster for checking in for the first time, and to everybody that commented and contributed and whatnot. The Marias, Gino, whomever else. Thank you very much.
Remember the bail fund for John. You guys got to start that now. Get that working because I'm going down. Tom Duffy's coming for John.
I don't think he is.
Yeah, he is.
Nah, that'd be really stupid on his part. But anyway, we will try to screw it up less next week. Until then, have a great week, everyone. Next Sunday, 8:30. See you then.